Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Today, our guest is going to be Drew Johnson. He's a candidate for Nevada's Congressional District number 3. But before we get to Mr. Johnson, Jim, you have any rants?
No, not really. Actually, just been busy. Like I'm in a pivot point in my life right now, so I've been been pretty hectic.
Yeah, like a top spin.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, other than that, I'm doing good.
Well, this is actually the first show of 2024.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yes, this is the first show of 2024. Mr. Johnson, tell us about yourself. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Steve. Thanks for having me back. A lot of people will recognize me who watch your show from me running for county commission in 2022. But I'll take you a little further back. I was born in rural Appalachia, grew up in a trailer park in one of the poorest areas of the country.
Like Eminem.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Did you know Eminem?
He was in Detroit. I was in East Tennessee, but very, very similar, obviously. No, but, growing up that way, my mom really had to hustle. She worked at Walmart during the day, worked as a maid at night. And I think that's sort of what gave me my belief in limited government, free markets, because we didn't rely on government. We relied on, if we didn't have food in our fridge, we had neighbors who would help us out, family, and we do the same when we were a little bit better off. So it really taught me that, first of all, people are good and people make better decisions than the government, and you can't rely on government to bail you out. And the other thing that really, I think, influenced my decision to ultimately get into a career of public policy, I worked at the American Enterprise Institute, National Taxpayers Union. Basically, I've spent my career fighting for taxpayers, fighting for limited government. But when I was about 15, I was able to go on a Sister Cities exchange program with the sister city of Johnson City, Tennessee, which is close to where I grew up.
I had a Southern accent.
Yeah. I hide it sometimes, but sometimes it sneaks out. But
and you mentioned your mom. What about your dad?
Yeah, so my dad actually was a union welder. So they got divorced when I was pretty young. Lived most of the time with my mom, but my dad definitely supportive and helpful and things like that. I got a little sister, and so she still lives back where we're from. She's a nail tech, and has a daughter and niece from me, which is she's a senior in high school right now. Cool. So I'm super proud of her. But yeah, when I went to Russia, it was right after the wall fell. And I was able to meet kids my age, in high school.
What were you doing in Russia?
What's that?
What were you doing in Russia?
Well, it was a Sister Cities exchange program right after the fall of the wall. So it was.
You're not LDS or anything like that?
No. I wasn't trying to win any of the Russians over that way. But I did, the kids I met, they had family members who had been in gulags, and they had family members who had starved to death. And
explain gulags.
So basically they're political prison camps. So if you spoke out against the government, if you tried to sell things on the black market and the government didn't like what you were doing, you get thrown, literally.
And me and Jim would be locked up already.
Yeah, no doubt about that. But it really, that I think made me appreciate freedom, because you'd go to a grocery store there and there would be one kind of cereal. And even in Johnson City, Tennessee, you had all the different kinds of cereal, and that sort of, realization that free markets, limited government, capitalism made life better, kind of, like I said, inspired me to get involved in politics the way I have in my career.
Okay. Very cool. So, tell us a little bit about your county commissioner race, because that's still fresh in people's mind.
Yeah, obviously it was frustrating the way it turned out, but it was a great experience to meet so many great people. So I ran for county commission because I believe that there hasn't been a Republican now in 15 years on the Clark County Commission.
Since Bruce Woodbury.
You got it. And so I've got a background in a lot of federal policy, but also I've done a lot of open records requests, government accountability, getting bad guys get kicked out of office, things like that. And anytime one party controls everything for 14 years, you're going to have corruption, you're going to have waste, fraud, people doing things they shouldn't do. And I thought, I won't get a lot of legislation passed. I won't change the name of the airport like I'd hoped to do from Harry Reid to Las Vegas International. But what I can do is provide some transparency, some accountability. And on election night, I won by 2,600 votes out of 150, 160,000 votes. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, I was really proud of that.
For a district.
Yeah, and ended up a week later, I was the last person in the state of Nevada to lose from all those late ballots. I lost by 336 votes.
Didn't they do the same thing in Stavros?
It was
Anthony?
very similar to what happened to Stavros. Yeah, so he and I have had these discussions a few times. You know, it's certainly frustrating. And county commission, because of their power of the strip and water and development, I mean, it's really more powerful than the governor. It's frankly more powerful than being a member of Congress in terms of how you can impact individual people's lives here in the Valley.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the one thing I really took from that, when you lose by 336 votes, you do a lot of, what could I have done differently? How can we do things better this time?
Right.
And there were 24,000 Republicans in my district who did not vote.
Wow.
And so that's one thing that I want to get through as much as I can as I'm going around the district right now.
What do you think they didn't come out and vote?
Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with the belief that their vote wouldn't count, wouldn't matter. And we all have frustrations with the mail ballots and the ballot harvesting and all that. But the fact of the matter is that if you vote, your vote will count. And if I'd had a few hundred more Republicans turn out, I'd be county commissioner.
How do you think you're going to get them out this time?
I think the biggest thing that we've got is a better ground game to reach out to those Republicans who, you know, 2-3 days before Election Day haven't voted yet. And we're going to be able to ballot harvest. And that's one thing that Democrats are more comfortable with than we are as Republicans or conservatives or libertarians. Giving over your ballot and saying, I trust you, you know, tell me who I should vote for. I'll vote for him. I'll give you my ballot. And frankly, that's how we get beat. That's how Laxalt lost. That's how I lost. That's how we lost. You know, I think in Clark County, there were 10 races that were decided by fewer than 1,500 votes. Mm-hmm. We lost every one of the 10. And all of them, if we had just ballot harvested, if we'd done, you know, I wish that we weren't in a state that had universal, you know, automatic mail. I wish we had voter ID. Mm-hmm. I don't mind mail if it's two people who are, you know, alive and who live in their house. But Utah does a really good job where they make you put the last four of your social or the last four of your driver's license. They can check it out, make sure you're the right person, instead of the stupid signature verification and all that. But no matter how lax that stuff is, if we as Republicans get out, tell people what we believe in, tell people our stories, ask for their vote and ask for their ballot, we're going to win in November and we're going to win big.
Okay. So why this big transition from running for a county commission race to now running for a congressional seat?
Yeah, so with county commission, like I sort of said a second ago, it wasn't really my background as far as local government. It was more the need to have somebody who knew where the bodies are buried. But what I do day to day.
Where are they buried?
Yeah. Apparently, we won't get into that. You know more than I do.
I'll ask Mike McDonald.
There you go. But you know, what I've done for literally 25 years is work for free market, limited government, conservative organizations that look at the federal budget, find places to cut spending, encourage energy independence, encourage a closed border. I mean, I've worked at some of the places I'm really proud of. National Center for Public Policy Research. They do great energy work. At the National Taxpayers Union and Taxpayer Protection Alliance, I've been able to save taxpayers literally $60 billion in my career by finding wasteful spending, working with members of Congress. Hey, if you can do this, it'll save taxpayers money. It'll reduce the debt. And so I have this background of working with members of Congress. And what made me jump in ultimately was I've got a friend in Congress. I've known him for 20 years. And he said, I know you're frustrated about losing that county commission race, but I was looking at your district. That county commission district is most of CD3. And I hope you'll run. It's the most liberal part of CD3. I hope you'll run. I believe you can win. And the reason I want you to run is because we've got a bunch of yahoos up here who love being on Fox and love being on MSNBC and yelling at each other and calling each other idiots. But we need people who actually know how policy works. Right. And he said, we've got a lot of theatrical performers, but we don't have a lot of people who actually know, how to balance some numbers.
So this is not the Screen Actors Guild, right?
That's right. That's right. So hopefully, having a master's in public policy, working in public policy at the federal level for 23 years now, I think that brings a lot more value than like a Susie Lee with her background or some of these other people who didn't have real experience in public policy.
Right. Could you give us the boundary lines for that congressional district?
Yeah, it's a little bit gerrymandered like every district in Nevada, but the easiest way to think about it is if you're south of Lone Mountain west of the 15, all the way down to the state line. There's a little bit of Henderson that's in there, and then Laughlin. So if you're
you got Good Springs and all that.
Exactly, Sandy Valley, Good Springs, Prim, that area. And so obviously that means Southern Highlands, Mountains Edge, Summerlin, Enterprise. So that's the biggest chunk of my area. But one thing I really liked running for county commission was getting out and seeing the areas that I think are forgotten a little bit, like Good Springs and Sandy Valley and Laughlin in this case. I really appreciate having Chinatown in our district, because I think Chinatown has so many really inspiring entrepreneurs who are, it speaks to me with my background. I kind of came from nothing, and here they're living their American dream.
I thought you were going to say, I love the fish soup.
I love the fish soup. Yeah, I love that pickled sour hot fish soup. Absolutely. Yeah. But there's some great restaurants there for sure. But yeah, the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's another thing about the district is it's one of the more Asian districts in the West. It's one of the most Jewish districts in the West.
Oh, but let me stop you right there. You got the Marine Corps League right across the street, or right in Chinatown.
Yeah.
Right there.
So that's cool to have. There are a lot of retired veterans in the district. So it's a really diverse, interesting district. It's a very close split as far as nonpartisans, Democrats, Republicans. And I think there's a real kind of independent, small L libertarian, fiscal conservative vibe in the district. And obviously, I think, when you see somebody who's more or less a socialist like Susie Lee representing it so poorly, having somebody like me who wants to make sure that, like I said before, people make better decisions than government. And that's what I'm about, is trying to make sure that we can take as much power from government and put it in individuals' hands. I think we're all better off when that happens.
So have you been knocking doors and walking that congressional district?
Yeah.
What are the concerns people have been telling you?
Yeah, I think the concerns are what you feel in your pocket, which is, inflation, gas prices, housing prices. Those are the things I hear about. Obviously, a lot of people are concerned about the border. They're concerned about, there's one thing that makes me feel good as a Republican is that people are starting to understand, hey, my life was better 5 or 6 years ago than it is today. I had more money in my pocket. My job was more secure. And so
interest rates were down.
Exactly. I could afford to buy a house. And that's another thing that's a real issue here that I don't think people say directly, because they don't understand the sort of how we got here with supply and demand and things. But housing prices I couldn't imagine being, say I'm a 26, 28-year-old kid. I've got my first job. It's going well. Maybe I'm thinking about getting married, starting a family.
Right. I
don't know how the hell you buy a house right now in Southern Nevada. And the biggest reason for that is because the federal government owns 89% of Clark County. And we're not talking about Red Rock. We're talking about when you're driving to Mesquite or driving to Pahrump and you see all this land with no...
So, sorry, as a congressman, what do you plan to do about that? Because I hear it every year.
Yeah, so one of the frustrations is you have to work with the county commission to accept the land. And some of them want to keep this sort of inflated land value and housing price, but you've got to increase it's called disposal land, the amount that the federal government gives to the state and the county. And I think that one key thing will be making sure that we have a Republican senator also, because they have a lot of power with that. And if I can work with them, Amadei has done a good job on that issue too. So if we have more Republicans, we've got a better chance of having that issue heard.
Okay. So the economy, you mentioned the economy, right?
Yeah.
Did you mention infrastructure?
I didn't, but I think that
I want to know as a congressman. Yeah. As a congressman, what are you prepared to do? What bills and legislation are you prepared to put forth before the committees to get all these things that you just mentioned addressed?
Well, one thing that I would like is, when I'm asking what committees I will be on and knowing what you kind of end up with as a freshman, kind of backbencher, transportation and infrastructure is a committee I would love to be on. And that would really give me sort of a more powerful pulpit to try to get some of that federal land. But also, I mean, the government, when you look at the Constitution, what the government is supposed to be doing at the federal level, infrastructure is one of the few things that is a legitimate role of the government. And so I think when you look at the things that Biden says he has done, he hasn't been successful because he put so many strings on, okay, we'll build this, but we have to have contractors from this certain area. We have to have contractors with this many people who have, are left-handed and all this sort of stuff. And we haven't gotten
with the union
built.
Symbol.
Exactly. All of it has to be union and all that mess. So there's money out there to build things. I think the problem is that the way that the Democratic leadership has wanted to see things get built has made it where it's more expensive, and there haven't been a lot of shovels in the ground. And frankly, a lot of it is infrastructure that really doesn't serve people very well. Like the example I can give is right now, we don't need the federal government involved in broadband internet. We have nationwide, we have the ability for private companies, and especially with satellite internet and the things we have now, we don't need the government involved in that. And a huge chunk of the infrastructure money that Biden got passed through was focused on that. And we've got bridges that are crumbling. We have roads that need widening, things like that, that should take precedent over something that the private, that free enterprise, that private companies can handle. And that just, nothing frustrates me worse than seeing the government get involved in business where private businesses should be doing that work.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you now, I know this is a pipe dream, but just honestly, I wanted to get your feelings on this, because this is something that has bugged me for a long time, and it started back in 57, where the federal...
1957?
Yeah. Yeah, it was when Eisenhower sent in the first airborne. Okay, so now, and then JFK really started it up. So basically, like the state of Nevada, the federal government basically tells you, this is what your speed limit laws are going to be. And if you don't do what we tell you to do, we're pulling your transportation.
Yeah, you don't get federal infrastructure money.
Right, yeah. So is there any way that when you get up there, you could get a group together and maybe start to try to address that a little bit?
I sure hope so, because we have, and obviously we should have speed limits. We should have DUI laws, things like that. But all of those things the states were just browbeat with infrastructure funding, like you're saying with highway funding.
Right.
And it shouldn't be the federal government's role to say, hey, Wyoming, where you have 600,000 people and hundreds of miles of perfectly straight, beautiful interstate, you have to follow the same rules that Connecticut does. And there's a little bit of flexibility,
right,
which is great. But I mean, there is a lot of frustration with the dictates that the federal government gives to the states. And I'm a huge 10th Amendment guy. I believe that states make better decisions than the federal government. And the more you can localize decisions, the better off we all are, both in terms of the tax money it costs, how well the decisions are made, prioritization of what's actually needed. So yeah, anytime that you can devolve power away from the federal government to states and local governments, the better off we all are.
So is our state symbol a traffic cone? Because everywhere you go, you see these traffic cones and you see no work. Couldn't there be some type of legislation that would streamline that, to say, you put it up a day before you start work, instead of having it out there for weeks and months at a time and causing traffic and accidents and people spilling their coffee in their lap and all that craziness?
A lot of it comes down to the county level.
And it helps with the emission levels too, because
Absolutely.
As long as you're out there, you got your car on and you're blowing emission in the air, right?
That's right. There's no doubt about the more that you have stop and go traffic, the more people are stopped, the more the liberals can get upset about emissions issues. But a lot of that is
the liberals.
Yeah, the green extremists. Let's say that, because not every liberal is wrong about energy independence and things like that.
True.
But, and that takes me to another point, which is when you're asking me about my background. Probably the thing I'm best known for. I've been fortunate to go on a lot of TV and radio shows and talk about things I've written and discovered. But about 15 years ago, Al Gore won his Academy Award for An Inconvenient Truth for Best Documentary, right? So when he gave his acceptance speech. He said, basically, we should all walk, ride bikes to work. We should hang our clothes out. Right. We should hang clothes out like Little House on the Prairie and not use our dryers. Right. And so at the time, I was running
the bird shit up.
Exactly. Yeah, I was running the think tank I founded in Tennessee, which is Tennessee's version of Nevada Policy. So I was sort of the Johnson Paulus or Andy Matthews of Tennessee back then when I was in my 20s. And we found that Al Gore used 22 times more electricity in his house than the national average. His power bills were over $2,000 a month. And it was so nice to get to point out that hypocrisy. And pretty soon after that, all the money ties came out.
Well, what kind of house does he live in?
So, good question. It's obviously...
And how come he doesn't have solar on his house?
It's bigger than the average, but even if you take into account the square footage, he still uses about 7 times more. After that came out, after I exposed that, he spent...
You exposed it.
I exposed that. I'm the person who found that. So I went on all these shows and pointed that out. That was a lot of fun. But, it did something really valuable, which is point out that the hypocrisy of the green extreme movement. And so many people behind that don't have to worry about, paying a power bill or, the gas they put in their car. And so it's just this good for thee, but not for me sort of thing. And meanwhile, they're raising the price on gas and people who are working for a living, making $30,000, $40,000 a year are struggling so hard to put gas in their car. And that's one of the things that I hope I was able to accomplish is to point out that their heart is not always in the right place. There's always, not always, but oftentimes a lot of financial incentive for people to get behind green energy movements or, green alarmism. There's a lot of power at stake. And a lot of people rightfully care about the environment. And so when you take those people and basically exploit them to get political power, that should be called out. And so I was proud to do that. After I put that out, he spent about $600,000 putting solar panels on his house, putting thermal heating, geothermal heating. And so I checked about 4 years ago for the National Center for Public Policy Research, like how is his electric bill today? His energy use was up over what it was in 2007 when I first found that. So,
what's interesting about that geothermal, didn't mean to interrupt, but did you know, I found this out the other day. Iceland completely powers the whole country with that. Guess what the byproduct is?
Hot water.
Methane.
Oh, yeah.
You know how they're always complaining about cows farting?
Yeah.
So, methane. And methane is one of the worst possible things for the ozone layer.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
So it's like you bite your nose off to spite your face with geothermal.
I have been in a hot tub in Iceland, and you definitely smell the methane for sure.
Oh, you doing a hot tub?
I was with my wife, Steve.
Is she listening? So, since we're on the infrastructure and transportation, rather, are you on board with this bullet train that they're saying they're gonna have from LA to Vegas? Are you on board with that?
I'm not on board with federal spending for it. My belief.
Why is that?
I don't like the idea of some person in Maine who will never use it bearing the expense with their tax dollars for something that I may get benefit out of. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, if it's a good idea, then private enterprise, private investment can pay for it. I'm happy to pay a couple dollars more for my ticket if I want to go see the Golden Knights play the Kings.
But don't you think it will cut down on emission and gas and overcrowding on the freeways, maybe?
I'd like to hope, but I'll sort of believe it when I see it. I think it's a great idea, and I hope it's successful. But I don't think that that's necessarily. First of all, I don't think it's a good use of American taxpayers' money. I can see it being some sort of an agreement with Nevada and California. I can see maybe some bonds or something like that. But ultimately, for the federal government to get involved the way it did, I'm not supportive of it. And also, I've been in Asia and seen places where it's been effective and worked. But I have concerns about the retraining of America, putting trains everywhere in America, because there's a reason why trains were taken out. And it was because it didn't go where people wanted to go in the America that we have now, which is so spread out. There's so much sprawl. And so it is not effective for most people. My hope is that this is a big success. There are huge parking lots that people can go to. And then, of course, in LA, or when it gets too close to LA, it's supposed to hook into LA's often lackluster subway system. And I hope it all works out. But, if I had my way, it would be done privately. I'm so supportive of the idea, but I'm not supportive of using somebody else's.
Nothing is done privately anymore. Look at the Allegiant Station. Stadium. $750 million of taxpayers' dollars built that, and people in Hawthorne is not going to probably never use it, never even see that stadium.
Right. Well, one argument with the stadium, which I would not have voted for public financing of a stadium, because I think ultimately it's subsidizing billionaires. But,
well, be careful. Mark Davis is
right. Yeah. But, the argument is that it's people who are staying on the strip, and it's room taxes. The problem is that we've got the room taxes so high now that it's actually making
almost
people
cost as much as the room.
Exactly. Reconsider whether or not they're going to come to Vegas on vacation. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you a good example of an idea that was funded privately. And it's going on specifically right now with CES in town. Mm-hmm. And that's the boring loop that was dug underground, where people could take Teslas underground and connect different parts of the convention spaces. And I think that's incredible. And I think that for a private business to do that is what we should be encouraging. The more that we give money to projects that should be private, the fewer private projects we get. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we need to do things to encourage innovation, investment that doesn't involve, Rita in Maine, who will never see this stuff, or Dave in Hawthorne, or whatever. I think that the people who use whatever it is, and this is the biggest problem, going back to transportation and infrastructure. The biggest problem we have right now with road funding is that we are so reliant on the gas tax. And as Democrats and environmentalists beat the crap out of us to go to electric cars, we don't have anything to backfill that. And so we keep raising gas taxes, especially in the state and local level. And, people who make good money can go out and buy an EV. And that's great for them. But then the people you have left are the people who are struggling to make ends meet already, and their gas is more and more expensive, and it subsidizes roads for people with EVs. So we've got to have a serious look about what transportation funding, infrastructure funding looks like, because having the poorest people subsidize it for the richest people, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
So could you tell me a little bit about the oath you would take when you, if and when you become a congressman?
Yeah, it's
what does that look like to you?
So to me, it obviously is uphold the law of the land, but to me, it's more kind of personal than that. Mm-hmm. Because, like I mentioned, I've worked for 23, 24 years in organizations fighting to expand liberty, fighting to push back against the size and scope of government. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, that's all rooted in the Constitution for me. And, the Constitution is something I actually read, I'm familiar with. I understand.
How many amendments in the Constitution?
There are 28 amendments in the Constitution.
What's your favorite?
10th, no doubt.
And which is?
So the 10th Amendment basically puts all powers that aren't enumerated in the Constitution back to the states. I also, as you can imagine, I'm a big First Amendment guy, and I believe in Second Amendment. But I think that, as I said before, the more local you can make decisions, the better off you are. And so that's what the 10th Amendment's all about. It's what we saw with the abortion ruling. Mm-hmm. And that's a really interesting situation, because for so long, the federal government had the say over abortion, and I've never thought that was appropriate.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Johnson. I don't understand the Republican platform is less government. Mm-hmm. So if their platform is for less government, Why are they infringing in your bedroom?
Yeah.
If we're supposed to separate church from state, why are they bringing their religion into it?
Right.
And that, for the life of me, I could never understand, when it comes to abortion, mm-hmm. because I think it should be a personal choice. Mm-hmm. Because your doctor, your God, whoever that might be, yeah. and your family. And then they worry about, okay, now they're having all these babies and now they're on welfare, and then they're gonna cry, oh, they're all on welfare now because you won't let them have a freaking abortion.
Yeah, I think
so it's like a double standard, which I cannot for the life of me understand.
Yeah. The good thing that we got out of the Dobbs decision, as far as I'm concerned, in Nevada, there's no discussion about abortion. It's none of
24 weeks. It's in our Constitution.
None of my damn business as a hopefully future member of Congress. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with me. It's like you said, 24 weeks, and
it's in our state constitution.
Besides,
so I don't know why we talk about that all the time.
Yeah, and besides that, I think there's a really important thing to point out. The people voted; they decided that it should be 24 weeks. For people in Nevada who believe that abortions should be banned or outlawed, or we all believe there should be fewer abortions. We've been fortunate because we've taken that decision away from the government, and we can have real honest conversations with people and talk to them about options that are available, encourage more adoption and encourage more foster care, better services. I mean, there's some great organizations here in Clark County that do wonderful work to try to give people alternatives to abortion. And I think for the people who believe deeply that abortion is murder, that abortion is wrong, that those people have the opportunity to make a bigger impact now because the laws are what they are. We don't have to fight them out, legislatively. It's not public policy. It's a personal decision now. And I think that should be empowering. And that's pretty exciting to me, quite frankly, that we no longer have to have these, Democrat, Republican, want to kill the babies, want to, never allow abortion, want to take away women's rights. It's none of that anymore. Now it's individuals having discussions about what's best. And like you said, at the end of the day, 24 weeks is the law, and it's between you, your partner, your God, your community, whatever you need to make those sorts of decisions. I would love to see fewer abortions, but it's none of my business.
Absolutely. So, and the reason why I brought up the oath is because we all took an oath. I mean, the military, you take an oath. When you run for political office, you take an oath. When you work for any government entity, whether it's like a person oversee whatever, like Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, you all take an oath. What's going on with this border? Isn't part of the oath is protect American citizens? Why is the border open the way it is? I mean, I lock my door at home. I close my windows. I don't want nobody in there that I don't know about. Why would anybody want somebody in the country that they don't know about, especially a 9/11 we had, and look what happened in the Gaza Strip. Right. I mean, it's just, I cannot understand the mindset of these people. And they worry about there's not enough jobs, and then you flood in all these people, good, bad, or indifferent. I don't give a rat's ass. I was naturalized when I came here. I came here from the island of Jamaica, and I had to take tests, and I had to go through a background, and a lot of these Americans that are here haven't even served in the damn military, and I did 12 years in the military to give back, right? So it's just frustrating to me. From me, because I wasn't born here and I had to go through all these hoops and hollers and investigations and all this BS to be an American citizen. And these people are just, and I say these people as in, I don't care what you are if you're not born here. You are these people. These people that are not born here, that are not naturalized, that don't have a freaking visa. Those are these people. Yeah. They just, I don't understand how these politicians in Congress and the Senate And the president is allowing this to happen.
There are some people who are willing to put our safety and security, what's fair to people like you, behind the attempt to get more people who will vote for them in the country, give them things, get them through the system faster, even when it's inappropriate, just so they have more voters. And that's disgusting. And it has put our country at risk. I was good, I guess, unfortunate enough. I was blessed to see an uncut video from October 7th in Israel to see what those people went through. And it made me realize how easy it would be. The number of people who were involved and killed so many Jews in Gaza, it was, we're talking about a very small number of people. And we've got literally under the Biden administration, more people than the population of the state of Ohio have illegally come into our country. And you're telling me that some of them aren't terrorists, some of them don't wish us harm. And that is scary to me, that there are people in this country leading our country who would sell us out and put us at risk to try to get more votes in and more people who will get on government programs and all this stupidity. But the thing that I think has impacted me the most, especially in Congressional District 3, which has 25% of the people, over 25% of the people are like you, first or second generation American immigrants. And to see the huge number of Filipinos like our friend Ron Q, people like you who have come in, done it the right way, their families have done it the right way, and to see that just spit at, laughed at. My heart breaks to think about the people who did it the right way and then see people flooding in and having the same opportunities they have. And I believe that we need immigration, but that immigration should be done carefully, reasonably, with background checks. And our immigration shouldn't be decided on what the cool latest group of people to bring into the country it is. It should be based on the needs of the workforce, of the employers of our country. Because they can say, hey, we don't have enough people to fill these jobs on the strip. It would be great if we could have more people come in who want to be American, who want to pay taxes, who want to contribute to our society. And there are ways to do that quickly, efficiently, reasonably, so that it's not disrespectful to people like you, and it doesn't put our national security at risk.
So as a congressman, what are you willing to do about it?
I think the key...
And have you been to the border, or are you going to the border?
I'm planning on going to the border before the primary. So I'll have a more...
Let me know. I want to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I did go to Ukraine recently, actually. So
you went to Ukraine too?
I'm happy to talk about that. But I think one of the real keys is getting a president who understands that securing the border is vital. This isn't a political football. This isn't a way to get a couple more voters. And until we get that, ultimately, I will do everything I can to fight to close the border. But at the end of the day, if things work out the way we all hope, I will be one of 435 people. And the president ultimately has a lot more control over the border than I would.
They say our immigration laws are outdated and don't make any sense. What do you say?
There are things that we could do to make the immigration laws more reasonable to fill the needs that employers have in America. But there are laws. We're not enforcing the laws that we have, whether they're outdated or not. If we enforce the laws, we would have a secure border. And that's one of the things that frustrates me is, we've got to have these new laws to address this and that. And when I get to Congress, I'm going to create a law that secures the border. All we have to do is enforce the laws that are already in place. And that's where we should start. And when I talk about more government and the growth of government, we have laws on the books to do all the things that we need to do. We don't need to create new laws.
They say it takes too long to become a naturalized citizen. What do you say to that?
I've got no problem speeding up the process. I think that, you can speak to that more than I can, having gone through it. I'm sure you would have liked to have been able to do it quicker. I've got no problem with streamlining the ability of people to be citizens who have proven themselves through the process they've gone through to contribute to society, to know about America, to know what America means, to contribute. That's not my concern. My concern is that the people who are flooding across without being vetted. I mean, people, I'm sure when you came from Jamaica, your family was looked at, you were vetted. They knew that you weren't some sort of crazy or some sort of terrorist. You became a crazy later on. but
oh, we don't want him now. Oh, too late.
Yeah, he's already in. But yeah, I mean, just enforcing the laws we have. If we can speed up things with naturalizing citizens, I don't have a problem with that. My concern is letting all these people come through who are undocumented, unchecked. We don't know who they are. And then all of a sudden they become citizens. They can vote. They can get on all these social programs. That is completely unacceptable. It's un-American.
You know, they're talking about the immigrants coming from Central America and coming through Mexico. And I heard somewhere the Mexican president say he's not worried about it because half of them are not going to make it anyway because they're going to die in transition. Right. So even that's a cry for help. Yeah. Even that a human
rights issue. Yeah, yes, absolutely.
But they're not talking so much about the ones that are coming in containers from overseas, like China and Russia and all those other places and Warsaw, Poland and all those. They're not talking about those. They're also not talking about the sex trafficking that's coming across the border and in containers from across the seas. They're not talking about that. As a congressman, what are you going to do to eliminate that?
You know, drugs, sex trafficking, it's all part of this.
Child sex trafficking.
Yeah, absolutely. Too. Child sex trafficking. It's all part of this.
It's a moneymaker.
Yeah.
That's why everybody turns their back. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I think there's part of that, but I think ultimately for the politicians who turn their head, close their eyes when it comes to the border, it's all about getting more votes.
Until it's their kid.
That's right.
Until their kids overdose from fentanyl or whatever it's called. Then it's a problem.
The number of people who I've met, you hear, I'm fortunate. I've never done drugs. I've lived a pretty straight and narrow, clean life. And
really?
And it, you never really realize the impact that it has. And I don't think there's been a week since I started running for county commission, much less, in this larger district running for Congress, where I haven't met somebody who lost a family member to fentanyl, or, some other drug. And, so it's, we've got some real problems, with mental health, with drug addiction, things like that. But so many of them are rooted in bad policies like the border.
So let's talk about voting. You hear the election was stolen and blah, 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 and that people are voting and people from other countries are voting and all that stuff. And are you in support of a national voter ID?
The way the Constitution is written, the states have a pretty broad opportunity to handle elections the way they want. I think that some nationalization of the election process would take a constitutional amendment. Ultimately, one constitutional amendment that I'm in support of and will co-sponsor is a term limits bill. But that's nothing that states can do. Or
Congress and Senate, termed out,
right? Three terms for Congress, 5 at the most, and then make 2 for Senate.
Mm-hmm. That'll help with a lot of corruption.
I agree completely.
You never heard of a Joe Biden becoming president if there was term limits.
That's exactly right. And but as far as what we can do to make voting better, there is a state constitutional amendment right now that people are trying to run an initiative that you can sign up for now that would require voter ID. And I think that is the best solution for us in Nevada. I think ultimately there's not a lot that we can do because of the makeup of the legislature to change things to make them where there isn't the appearance to some people of, corruption or fraud. But the one thing that I feel very secure about is that if we have to give the last four of our social security, last four of our driver's license, like I said before, like they do in Utah, we get rid of the shenanigans that can happen. And to your point, I don't know what's happened. I know my experience, which is, I was up by 2,600 votes on election night. I lost by 336 votes. And there are frustrations that I'm sure that there were ballots counted that probably shouldn't be counted. But my bigger frustration is that, as I said before, 24,000 Republicans in my district didn't vote. And a lot of that's because they don't trust the system. And I want to make everyone know and kind of rest easy about the fact that if they vote, their vote will count.
We have a new Clark County registrar now, so that probably would help things out. That Gloria, whatever his name is, Joe Gloria. Yeah. He turned his back on a lot of things, and I know this from personal experience because I brought something to him and he turned his back on after I gave him the evidence. But let's talk about our veterans and our military is being depleted. You do know that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to join anymore, hardly. And because of what's going on with the country and because of all these BS that they're doing to them. For example, when military used to deploy, they receive some type of COLA funding, or they receive some type of area where they could store their furniture and their belongings and their vehicles. Now they're putting the burden on the servicemen to pay for those and store it themselves. What kind of crap is that?
I had no idea. That's terrible.
That is terrible.
Yeah. Especially with what storage prices are right now. I can't imagine asking some kid who doesn't have money saved up to go and front all this money.
A private gets about $24,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That's what he gets.
That's crazy. That's what storage would cost for some places.
And especially if they go for 15 months, 2-3 years, and they're from one deployment to the next, their stuff is still in storage and they're still paying. So that's going on. They also charging military veterans to pay for their own. They got rid of the clothing allowance.
Oh, really?
I don't know are we having a budget problem, or is this all these illegals we're paying for coming through the borders, taking all our money? What is going on there, Mr. Johnson?
One thing that my background, I think, will give me an advantage in is, knowing how the government spends money, knowing things that can be cut, places that there is a great deal of waste. I think I can lead a charge for prioritizing our budget. And obviously, our military and the people who serve in our military take precedent. Mm-hmm. I mean, making sure that those people are taken care of.
Everything was good under Trump, I got to say, as far as the military was concerned. The military was strong. The military loved them. And it's just all in. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think that some of these things are deliberate.
And then, of course, when Biden comes in, you have more or less two active wars going on that America may or may not be involved in at some point. You're right. It puts our readiness isn't where it should be. No. I don't believe that America should get involved in every conflict that's going on around the world. But when the day comes that we have to, it does worry me that we're not as prepared as we need to be. One thing I have written a lot about, researched quite a bit about, is the VA, especially before Trump got in office. The VA was just completely unacceptable. The way it wasted money, failed to take care of our veterans. We still have way too many veteran suicides. That's something that's impacted my family, to be honest. And I want to make sure that the veterans, when they're done serving our country, that we serve them with the things that they need to get mental health care, that they get normal, regular health care. But we have to make sure that we do a better job for the people who serve us.
So we have Veterans Court here, finally.
Yep.
And I think that it still needs work after it's been in existence since Jim Gibbons signed it into law, I think, back in 2008.
You worked on that yourself,
yes.
I remember.
But there's still issues with it. We have, the last time I did a survey was a few years ago when Trump and Pence was running for office. There was 145,000 veterans that are in both state and federal prison. So my question is, what are we going to do about these veterans that are doing time in all these state and federal prisons? And how are we going to prevent more veterans from going to state and federal prisons? And in essence, it calls for a veterans court. I think that there should be and you were talking about federal government staying out of states' business, but when it comes to our veterans, I think that it should be a federal mandate that all municipalities have some type of veterans treatment court within their judiciary.
Yeah, I'd be open to talking about that for sure, because when you don't have those sorts of options, you have veterans with mental health needs, you have veterans with healthcare needs, you have veterans who are doing things to intentionally get in the system because maybe they're homeless, maybe they're underserved, and they are better cared for in the criminal justice system than they are through the VA or through local government programs. That's completely unacceptable.
So we have I don't know, how many branches of services do we have? We have the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marine,
Coast Guard, and
Space Force, Coast Guard. So we got six?
Six now.
Okay. The Air Force is the only branch of service that have an exit program.
Really?
They tell them exactly how to do resumes and what to look for and get all their medical stuff. But the other branches of service don't have an exit program. He's like, you're out. And especially the Army and Marines that actually go into combat.
Right.
They're the ones that need the exit program more than the Air Force, which I call it the Chair Force. I call it the civilian branch of the military. Air Force has toilets when they go into the field, and the Marines have to dig a hole with an e-tool. Okay? That's right, civilian branch.
I'm not getting between the Air Force and the Marines here. I just want to make that clear.
So as a congressman, what could you do to make sure that all branches of service have some type of exit program to get veterans ready for civilian life?
How long has the Air Force had that? Do you know?
I have no idea.
I would love to find out more about that, because I think that could be done either privately through nonprofits or through the government. Either way, I would love to see it. I think that's something I would certainly get behind, because I was unaware of that. I thought that all the branches, when you got out, that you got sort of job training, that you got
not at all.
That's really surprising and disappointing.
And then they worry about why they're in the state and federal prisons, right?
Yeah. One of the things that one of the first conversations I had, I think it was the day I announced, was with a Gold Star widow. And she said, the toughest part for me, besides losing my husband, was the fact that there was nobody who could sort of shepherd me through this process. Here I was, my husband had died 6 hours ago, and I was on the phone trying to call people in the military to make sure that the benefits were there for the burial, all that sort of stuff. And I think that the first bill that I would want to sponsor is to have some sort of, for lack of a better word, like a concierge service to help those Gold Star families deal with that tragedy, that loss. When she told me her story, I just choked up. I mean, I couldn't imagine if I lost my wife and having to, oh, I'm sorry, you're going to be put on hold, listen to the hold music for an hour and a half to see if I had the money to bury her. Mm-hmm. So that's something that really, that conversation impacted me a lot. And I think that's I think when you run for Congress, most people have a short list of things I would like to get accomplished. And that's one of mine.
So, you know what the Biden administration did with all those military folks that was due for promotion, right?
Oh, getting held up.
Delayed.
Yeah.
What, how is that even right for them to hold up promotions like that?
Yeah. And some of it was Tuberville trying to prove a point on the Senate side. And, I don't think it's appropriate for Republicans or Democrats to play politics with promotions, with people's livelihoods, with pay increases.
And commands.
Exactly. Yeah. Where you're going to live, who you're going to be over. That's one of the things I really don't like about politics right now. And hopefully I can turn down the temperature a little bit on Capitol Hill to the extent that one person can. I think, like I said in the beginning, people are good. I don't think that Democrats necessarily can do math as well as Republicans. Therefore, I'm a Republican. But I think that there are ways that we can work together. And certainly when it comes to the military, only extremist people don't believe that we should put the military first, that we should make sure our veterans are taken care of. We should ensure that the military is well funded. There's a lot of waste in the Pentagon. I've frankly made part of my career exposing some of that stuff. But that's money that I believe should go to other parts of the military, should protect our veterans, should protect our people in service. And that's what I want to make sure to fight for. And I want to work with Democrats and Republicans alike to
you ask any actor that have security or any kind of music mogul that have security, they take care of their security. They treat a lot of the security like family. Why is an American doing the same thing with their security? And their security is the veterans.
I think that the average person in America feels that way and believes that, hey, I'm paying a lot in taxes. I love the veterans. I love what the military's done for me. I assume that things are being taken care of. And the problem is in DC, so often things get, I don't know if it's fallen between the cracks or people not paying attention, but the family that I grew up in, my wife's family, who's filled with veterans as well, that's something that is very front and center for me. So veterans in Southern Nevada can rest assured that you've done your job for us. I want to do my job to make sure you're taken care of.
What's your position on Ukraine?
So as I mentioned, I went to Ukraine.
As a soldier?
As a person, as a journalist, actually. And I still have columns in Newsmax and Town Hall and a few other publications. I've given up a few, but still have a few that I write from time to time. And I wanted to see firsthand what it was like. What I found was that I wasn't close to, where the fighting was occurring at that time. And even in these kind of rural areas, seeing the number of people who had died in these villages who had gone to fight, it was heartbreaking. But there's sort of two sides to it. There's the fact that Ukraine is a sovereign state and Putin is a dictator and a terrorist, and he has no business invading a sovereign nation. There's another issue. Well, there are kind of three issues here. Another issue is that the EU and to a lesser extent, America, by pushing closer and closer to Russia, as he was saying, please don't get any closer to Russia. I'm respecting your boundaries. Please respect mine. If you put, EU military in Ukraine, in Baltic states, if you allow Ukraine to join the EU, then I see that as a threat, much like if I were to put my military in, in the Caribbean or in Mexico. And I get that. I get that. And I think that we kind of poked the bear enough to where he woke up and was mad. The other thing is, I, like a lot of Republicans, a lot of Americans, have a lot of concern with sending our hard-earned tax dollars to Ukraine, knowing that the government is corrupt, knowing that there are issues with how things are run there. And so I don't believe that we should, as a government, send our tax dollars, our people's tax dollars, to Ukraine. I think that there are private organizations that we can support and help Ukraine. But I think the more that we give them money, it only props up bad decision-making, corruption in their government. And one thing that does give me hope as Ukraine continues to look to the West is they can incentivize other countries in Europe, NGOs can incentivize Ukraine to be more transparent, accountable, to have better open records laws, to have, better transparency with how they spend their taxpayers' money. But it's not our role to give money to every country in the world. But at the end of the day, Ukraine is a sovereign country. I want Russia the heck out of it.
I mean, there's other NATO countries over there that could give money.
And they have been, and that makes me feel a little bit better. But I can't imagine a scenario where I'm not a big foreign aid guy personally.
I always say clean up your own backyard before you clean up somebody else's.
And that's the problem. When
we got problems right here. We got homeless issues. We got mental health issues.
We got $34 trillion in debt that is climbing. Yeah, that is making our dollar meaningless and worthless. And that's, quite frankly, the biggest problem.
Euro is worth more than our dollars.
Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating to see the Biden administration say, I've got something called the Inflation Reduction Act. We're going to print a bunch of money to address the inflation crisis that we've got going on, which was caused by printing money to buy things that we didn't need. It's just that sort of stuff is so frustrating. So that's I think Representative Massey has a pretty good policy when it comes to foreign aid, which is my heart goes out to certain places, not to others, but I'm not spending a dime of my constituents' money playing sheriff, giving people money. You know, if you want to give money places, and Israel obviously right now is something.
Your position on Israel?
I mean, that Israel is, we have to stand with Israel as Americans because they are, our ally in the Middle East. They're the ones
keeping the peace in the Middle East.
That's exactly right. So I think that the least amount of American treasure and, our fighting men and women that we can involve in that, the better. But we have to make sure that Israel's taken care of. Like I said, the uncut footage I saw from October 7th, it really puts in perspective good and evil. I certainly don't condone Israel killing innocent civilians, but we've got to figure out a way to make sure that Jews in the Middle East and Israel in particular aren't targeted.
So, how do you feel about the dual citizenship we have in this country when people are American and Israeli? And they went back to join the IDF to fight against Hamas. What's your take on that? I've met some people who did both help with fighting on the ground and with healthcare, with emergency services. And I find those people pretty inspirational, quite frankly. Okay. And if they want to do that, that's great. I think as I said before about Ukraine, we need to make sure to limit our funding and the amount of resources that we apply in that situation. But we have to make sure that Israel remains intact, that they remain our ally, because we really are in a pretty rough predicament without Israel. You talked about the inflation being, 33 trillion?
The debt, 34 trillion, I think.
Over that. Do you think the Biden administration freezing all the student loan debts, do you think that would add to it, or do you think that would free up money for Americans?
First, it would obviously, if we used money to pay, if we use tax dollars to pay for that.
No, if it's all forgiven and we're...
we'd have to, if it's forgiven, then it would obviously be tax dollars. That would be ridiculous. Listen, I was 18, went to college, had to take a loan. As I said, I'm not from a very affluent family. Struggled, worked, had jobs, and I worked my ass off to pay off my student loan. And I think that, when you're 18 years old, if you sign that document that you promise as a young man, a young woman, as an adult to pay off this loan that you're getting, you have the right, you have the responsibility to go to college and to pay the debt that you incur. And so it's unfair in a similar way that it's unfair to just let everybody through the border to somebody like you who went through the naturalization process. It's unfair to people like me who went to college, who paid their student loans off, who struggled to do it. And I think that the good thing about the discussions that we're having now, both with the cost of college, student loan prices, and some of the craziness that we've seen with the hearing, the anti-Semitism, the sort of the wokeness going on in college, it's making more and more parents and young Americans realize that college isn't for everybody. Mm-hmm. And, I am a big fan of the trades. My wife actually wrote her thesis in grad school about alternatives to college. Mm-hmm. And I think that's exactly what we need to push, because right now we're just pouring money into a broken system. College is appropriate for some people, but most people would make more money if they did a trade, if they were an apprentice. And having a dad that worked as a pipe fitter, as a welder, I saw that in my own family. I mean,
was in the union?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think, if I had my way.
Do you believe in unions?
There are some, that's what I was going to say. There are some avocations, there are some jobs, there are some careers that the union is appropriate, I think. Historically, there are a lot, but I think we have laws in place to protect people now, that unions are less and less valuable. And when you talk about things like public employee unions, and I mean, that's just a way to more or less threaten lawmakers into giving people more money when it may or may not be appropriate. But, there are a lot of members of unions in this state who, some of them support their unions, some of them don't. But at the end of the day, we can set unions aside and just ask those people, are they better off today, or were they better off 5 or 6 years ago? And I think a lot of those union members who have been sort of, encouraged or browbeat, or however you want to put it, into voting for Democrats, are now realizing that Democrats don't have their best interests at heart. They use them, they exploit them. And I think that a lot of the union members in the state will be looking to reasonable Republicans like me who want to make sure that their dollar means more, that they have more take-home pay, that they can afford to put gas in the car.
Well, this will be my last question, unless Jim has anything.
I just got 2 quick questions.
My last question is this, which is a high topic item that's been in the news: immunity for judges and police officers. What's your take on that?
So obviously, I am very supportive of our police. I'm not a BLM person. I'm not a defund the police person like my opponent, Susie Lee. There are some cases where I've seen police officers abuse their immunity, and I've seen states who've addressed that and gone too far, where police officers aren't protected like they should be. And I've seen it go the other way, where you encourage bad behavior by police officers. So I think there's the thing I will say is, doing ride-alongs, knowing Sheriff McMahill, I'm very confident in Metro's ability to behave responsibly. Mm-hmm. The training they get is unbelievable. I mean, they get more training and put in more hours in the classroom than any police department I can imagine. And so I feel very confident in the job they're doing, and I'm so thankful to have them in the city. And hopefully we have more and more people willing to serve as police officers in Southern Nevada.
That's also lagging too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one thing that I think is it seems to be improving. It seems like a lot of the issues that have been plaguing Metro in years past are getting addressed. One thing that was a real frustration, and I probably spoke about it when I was here for County Commission, was the hold times, because it was so hard to find people. Hold time for 911, but particularly for 311, it was so hard to find call takers and dispatchers. And that's something that I've seen improve, because some of the benefits that were changed both at the state ledge level and locally. And I think we're sort of heading in the right direction with our police. We just have to head in the right direction with the economy, because obviously, as we all know, the worse the economy gets, the more crime you have.
And the judges.
The judges, that is your specialty, my friend. Tell me what you're seeing with that.
Oh, well, I personally, I think that some of them take advantage of the judicial immunity. Mm. And they deliberately, I could understand something that was an oversight, but some of them deliberately do things that are against state law, and deliberately do things that are against the Constitution. I've heard several judges said to litigants in their courtroom that the Constitution doesn't apply in my courtroom. So that alone should be an alarm. Because if you take away that judicial immunity from that judge, I bet you those comments will never hear the sound of a courtroom again.
Sure.
So stuff like that, yes.
One thing that I like about Nevada that, Tennessee, where I grew up and lived when I was younger, we had so many appointed judges there in Tennessee, and a lot of states in the East have there are hardly any judicial elections. When there are, it's retention. Do you want to keep them? Do you want to boot them? Here, we actually have competitive judicial races, and we can get stories like that out. And I think some of the work that you do and other people in that world is really valuable because,
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is when you're voting for a judge. There's no R, there's no D. There are signs that you see everywhere of lovely looking people who you think would do a good job, and they've got the gavel, and you trust them, but you just don't know how they're going to be as judges. And I think the more awareness that we can have about who we're voting for, the better off we are. And that's why you're valuable. The Nevada Republican Club does a slate card.
That's why there should also be term limits for judges as well.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's an issue that maybe at the state level we should be talking about.
I just have two quick questions. One of the biggest frustrations that I have always had about government, especially in Washington, D.C., now I understand when you get elected, you're going to need a staff. Okay. But we have so many unelected bureaucrats running our government.
Yep.
That's why half the time senators and congressmen, they have no idea what's in a bill because they didn't even write the bill.
Right.
So what would you do if elected to kind of rein in these unelected bureaucrats that are actually writing these bad, really awful bills?
The easy way that you can address that is by stopping all these continuing resolutions, these CRs. Because every time we do that, every time we say, okay, we're going to allow this to go for another year, we're going to fund it at what we funded it at last year, plus a little more, what you're doing is taking away the ability to review and see how these bureaucracies, these agencies, commissions work, how they do their job. There's no accountability. And when you stop and you say, let's look at the budget, let's see how much we actually need to be spending, let's see what these agencies do. A good example is the Endangered Species Act. It gets involved in, it gets rolled into these CRs every year. We never see, is it actually saving animals? Is it doing anything good with our tax dollars? And so all these people who work to implement the Endangered Species Act and go take some poor guy's land because a green-haired squirrel, ended up running across his property. We've got to start holding those people accountable and holding the agencies accountable. And that's the easiest thing. We've got to stop as Republicans saying, okay, Democrats, we'll just go with the CR. We don't want that fight. And we have to be more responsible to start looking at budget, at appropriations, at budget authorizations earlier in the year. So it's not, oh my gosh, it's October. We've got to do a CR. We've got to do.
That was my follow-up question. That was just my two questions because I've brought this up for years on the show. I'll be like, it'll just be something random like April. And I'm like, hey, where's the federal budget at?
Right.
Are we working on it? Or are we going to wait till at midnight? We're going to have to shut the government down. And we do that. It seems like every year.
Right.
It's a scare tactic, I think.
Right. It probably is.
And it keeps people from having real conversations about budget priorities. And as I mentioned before, I think that's the value add of hiring Drew Johnson for this job is you have somebody who helps put together state and federal budgets, who goes through the federal budget, who finds waste, fraud, and abuse, who can actually say, guys, this isn't doing us any good. It's not helping our taxpayers. It's not serving our citizens. We can eliminate this. Maybe that frees up more money that we can lower the debt. It frees up more money that we can lower taxes. We can give to veterans or the military. And there just aren't enough people. I mean, the budget's complex. Spent a lot of years working on understanding it. And I think, especially at the federal level, it's, you've got to do FOIAs and things like that just to see how money's spent. And there just aren't a lot of people, including Susie Lee, who have any idea how things work. And I think that I can at least bring some real insight and hopefully a sort of be an advocate for taxpayers in Congress.
You sure seem to have a pretty good handle on this stuff. You're probably one of the most impressive guests we've had on in a while.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And we went around a whole bunch of different topics.
And most importantly, when you go to Golden Knights games, I'm the guy who started the Victory Flamingo tradition. So when we win and have all those stupid plastic flamingos on the ice, that was my idea. You think it would be some drunk 18-year-old kid, but it was a middle-aged dude.
So I don't want you to do your closing, but I want to ask you, did we cover everything you'd want covered?
I think we've worn everybody out at this point. So
okay, very good.
I'm comfortable.
Jim?
I'm good.
All right. So Mark is going to zoom in on you, and you have the final remarks. And please give your point of contact as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to my website at drewfornevada.com. All my social media is at Drew for Nevada as well. I encourage everybody, as I said before, to understand that if you vote, your vote will count. And I hope that I can earn your vote. Go to my website to see more about what I believe. But ultimately, if you believe that people make better decisions than government, that government should be smaller, that taxes should be less, that spending should be reduced, I'm certainly your guy. And at the end of the day, as I said, I'm one of 435. If I'm elected, I'll fight for our beliefs, for my beliefs, that government should be smaller, more responsible. But most importantly, I will show up in the community. This is something that Susie Lee doesn't do very well. When you call for a Social Security, for a VA, for whatever problem that you may be facing, I will make sure that my staff handles your issue. If you want a tour, if you want a flag, those sorts of things, that's ultimately the most important thing that a member of Congress can do is be there for the community. And I promise to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Folks, that's Drew Johnson. He's a candidate for Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. We had a robust conversation, very informative. We hope you stay tuned and educate yourself on these candidates running for elected office. This is Steve Sanchez and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.